Good evening, everyone. My name is Steve Johnson. I'm the director of the Seal Debate program here, and I am very happy to welcome you to the championship round of the 2023 Cabin Fever Debates. Let me give you a little bit of history on the Cabin Fever Debates. We started this project now, technically, 18 years ago. 2006, I think, was our first one. But this is our 16th Cabin Fever Debates. And the reason, of course, is because we were interrupted for a couple of years, during which we decided not to try and run a virtual debating event for people who'd never debated before, but instead put it on hiatus and are very glad to be back in person. So this is our reintroduction and our 16th annual Cabin Fever Debates. We're very happy to have you here with us. The whole purpose of the Cabin Fever Debates is to give a chance to those who aren't active on our competitive debate program here at UAA to dip their toes into competitive debate to get a sense of what it's like. And we have found this to be productive on a whole host of levels, not only to raise awareness about the debate program here on our campus, but also as a terrific recruiting tool. So there's a very good chance that some of these 8 fine folks might be representing UAA in competitions down the road somewhere, and we'd be delighted if they were to do so. A couple of things about what you're going to see tonight. The first is to know that we are participating in a format of debate called British Parliamentary Debate. It's the standard format for debate that is used in international competitions, and particularly at the World Universities Debating Championships. It is like most forms of academic debate in that there is a pro side and a con side, and they're arguing about a topic that we presented to them. None of the debaters had a choice about what the topic was going to be. None of the debaters had a choice about which side they were going to be advocating on this topic, and that is the tradition of academic debate wherever it's practiced. Well, the way this format differs from other styles of academic debate is that rather than just 2 teams involved in the debate, a pro side and a con side, we've actually got 4 teams, 2 representing the pro side and 2 representing the con side for tonight's debate. All 4 of those teams are competing against each other. So despite the fact that the pro side has 4 people on it, there's actually 2 teams competing against each other against the other 2 teams over here. So at the end of the debate, our panel of judges will choose one of these debate teams to be crowned the champion. That decision is made in part on the quality of the arguments they make and in part on the execution of the strategy that they employ throughout the entirety of the debate round. The way the debate works is pretty simple. Each of these 8 speakers gets one 7-minute speech during which to make their best case for or against the motion that we have presented to them. We'll start with someone from the proposition side and then alternate between the proposition and the opposition until all 8 of those speakers have had a chance to speak. So the whole debate takes about 56 minutes. During each of those speeches, you're going to hear a series of bells. After the first minute and before the last minute of each of the speeches, you're going to hear a single bell. It sounds like that. That means that points of information are now allowed. A point of information is a formalized interruption of the primary speaker. So if, for example, the first speaker from the proposition is making his argument about the motion that they've been charged to defend, someone from the other side can rise and ask them a point of information. Now, a point of information is entirely at the discretion of the person holding the floor. So you may see, for example, that primary speaker decide that they don't want to take that question at that moment. And in that case, they would ask the person asking for that opportunity to simply sit down or perhaps say, not at this time. That's not being rude. Part of what they're judged on is how they manage those interactions effectively. If they do grant the opportunity to ask that point of information to their opponent, then that opponent has 10 or 15 seconds to ask a question or make a brief argument. They'll sit back down, and the primary speaker is expected to respond to that point of information in their ongoing comments. This usually happens once or twice, sometimes 3 times during each individual speech, but may not happen at all, and that's okay too. That's just a matter of how that speaker is choosing to manage their time. At the end of each 7-minute speech, you're going to hear 2 bells. That means that their time has elapsed. They have then a 15-second grace period to wrap up their thoughts. And if after that 15 seconds they continue to speak, you'll notice that the entire room will start pounding on the table to make sure that nobody can hear the arguments that they're making. Pounding on the table is another important thing to talk about. One of the traditions of British parliamentary debate as it's practiced in competition is that there's audience involvement and engagement, which means that we want you involved in the debate as well. The traditional way to show your support for an argument that you find compelling or to give support to a speaker who's making a point that you think is relevant in the debate is to pound on the table and say, "Hear, hear." It's a good time to practice that now so you don't feel awkward during the debate. Go ahead and pound on the table and say, "Hear, hear." Feel free to do that during the debate. Let the debaters know that you appreciate their arguments. It gets them more enthusiastic about the positions they're taking and generally enlivens the entire debate. Once all 8 of the speakers have had a chance to make their arguments, then we're going to dismiss our panel of judges and give them a chance to deliberate. The ideal is that they will reach consensus on one of these teams to be crowned the champion, and then the rest of the teams will be finalists. The champion of tonight's debate will win $1,000 that they'll split between the team members, typically 50-50, but if they're really good debaters, maybe they can convince each other that a different split is appropriate. The remaining finalists will share $250 between the 2 team members, and one of our debaters will be crowned the recipient of the Quianna Clay Prize for Excellence in Debating. I'll tell you more about that as well. All of that is going to happen probably about 10 or 15 minutes after the round concludes. We're going to excuse the debaters, give them a chance to interact with you a little bit, grab a drink of water, whatever they need to do, while our judges are deliberating. We're going to reset the stage, put our awards up here, and then once our judges are finished, we'll invite everybody back in to announce the results of this final round. The topic that we're going to be debating tonight reads as follows. The United States Congress should pass a law to forgive $50,000 of individual qualified student loans. If you're watching the news today, you might know that today was the first day of oral arguments before the Supreme Court on President Biden's proposed loan forgiveness program. Now, that already has been taken as an executive action. It exists as a policy priority, but it has not yet been enacted because there are reactions and lawsuits that have followed the implementation of that policy that are currently holding that in suspense. I want to make clear that the arguments that we're going to be having tonight have to do with much of the same subjects that are being debated at the Supreme Court, but don't include the legality portion of it. The Supreme Court is deciding whether or not the Department of Education has the authority to make that decision and forgive those loans. What we're talking about tonight is whether or not the legislation that would be passed by Congress is a good idea or a bad idea. So expect to hear a lot of arguments tonight about whether or not forgiving student loans is just, is economically viable, and ultimately is the responsibility of us collectively or the responsibility of the individual who chose to take those loans out in the first place. I know that I'm looking forward to hearing these arguments. It's a topic in which I'm very interested, and I'm confident that the debaters will do a terrific job of exploring those arguments with you tonight. We have a most competent Speaker of the House. Shannon Tejada is going to be managing the transitions between the debaters and calling the House to order. We have a terrific panel of 5 judges who's made up of our very active members of the Seawolf Debate Program who just came off a 3-day weekend of hosting the state high school drama debate and forensics championships. And now they've turned around and come here to volunteer their time to judge their fellow students at UAA here tonight. So I very much appreciate them and all of the Seawolf debaters who have worked to make this entire month-long competition that we've been running a terrific success. So without any further ado, I'm going to now turn it over to our Speaker of the House and ask Shannon to call the House to order.
Again, congratulations to all of you making it the final round of Cabin Fever debates. And without further ado, I would like to call this House to order and invite Kyler Ferguson to deliver a 7-minute speech in defense of the motion. The U.S. Congress should pass a law to forgive $50,000 of individual qualified student loans. Hear, hear.
Hello, my name is Kyler, and I believe the U.S. Congress, our government, should pass a law to forgive or cancel out debt with no impact to credit, $50,000 of individual qualified federal student loans. We think that what we're really arguing about today is the status quo versus economic sustainability. We will win this debate because we can prove the economic unsustainability of our student loan crisis. We're going to do that with 3 main points. The first of which is a college degree is a necessity. The second is debt is equatable to servitude. And our third argument are we're going to parallel the student debt crisis versus the 2008 financial crisis. Before we get into that, I'm going to go over some history. In the 1960s, President Lyndon B. Johnson, in an attempt to provide universal access to education, launched the federal student loan program as a way to pay for it. In the 60s, banks were skeptical on issuing seemingly risky loans to students, so the majority of student loans were insured by the government and issued by private banks. This was the case until 2010, when all students' loans became direct loans, meaning they come directly from the Department of Education. This is due to the Obama administration claiming loans issued by private banks only benefited private banks and did nothing to bring down the cost of college. And this is true. While this is true, it means that government is now liable for 100% of the risk if the student defaults. Now I'll move on to some quick numbers. In 2006, there were $500 billion of student loans. As of 2022, this number has increased to $1.7 trillion. That's $1.7 trillion for 44 million people. Now, as we go into the first point of contention, a college degree is an increasing necessity in the American economy. For every year that passes, there is roughly a 1% increase of the U.S.'s population that graduates college, with 38% of Americans having a degree as of 2021. If this trend is to continue, a college degree would be as ubiquitous as a high school diploma by the end of the century. This is due to technological advances that have increased the demand for workers with specialized skills and knowledge, which is most likely happening is because globalization has in the job market, making it more difficult for individuals without a college degree to secure high-paying jobs. Changes in the economy have also led to the disappearance of many working-class jobs, which traditionally did not require a college degree but provided a decent income. Obtaining a college degree can significantly increase a person's employment opportunity and earning potential, as well as greater job security and improve quality of life. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, in 2020, the median weekly earnings of workers with a bachelor's degree was $1,305, compared to $746 for workers with only a high school diploma. Additionally, individuals with a college degree are more likely to have access to employer-provided benefits, such as health insurance and a retirement plan. For many people, student loans are one of the largest financial burdens they will face in a lifetime. It can take decades to pay this off, and it can lead to an individual feeling like they're working strictly to pay off their debt rather than being able to use their income for other things, such as saving for retirement, buying a home, or starting a family. Individuals may be unable to take advantage of other opportunities, such as starting their own business or traveling, as they are too financially burdened by their debt. This brings me into my second point of debt is servitude. Debt can be seen as a form of servitude because it limits an individual's freedom and forces them to make decisions based off their debt repayment obligations. Lenders pursue debt structures that prioritize profits, similar to indentured servitude, because slavery is one of the most efficient ways to make a profit. The fact becomes even more insane when you consider that most people are around age 18 when they incur these debts. The prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain that controls rationality, isn't even fully developed until 25. Student loan debt is also one of the few types of debt that cannot be discharged by bankruptcy. While defaulting refers to the failure to meet the term of a loan agreement, bankruptcy removes debtors' personal liability for debts owed or allows them to reach a more manageable plan. Not being able to file for bankruptcy can lead to a lifetime of debt and financial insecurity, as borrowers who are unable to pay off their loans may face wage garnishment, tax receipt interception, and more penalties. For example, in Lakeland, Florida, as many as 100 nurses have lost their license to practice because of an inability to pay their loans. These points show how student debt needs to be forgiven. It's a fact that the high level of student loans has negative implications for the economy. Graduates with large debt tend to delay purchases such as homes and cars, and this can slow down economic growth. In addition, the burden of student loans can lead to reduced retirement savings, lower credit scores, and increased delinquencies, which can lead to lower economic productivity.
You talk about a lot about how debt is bad, but how exactly does forgiving $50,000 of it going to provide a sustainable solution to that?
I will get to that in the end. I'll mention that. Forgiving student loans will provide a stimulus to the economy by freeing up more disposable income, increasing demands for goods and services, and allowing graduates to save more. Furthermore, the student loan industry has been accused of engaging in predatory lending practices, such as charging high interest rates and fees, making it difficult for borrowers to refinance their loans and aggressively pursuing borrowers who are struggling to make their payments. And that sets me up to go into my final point, how the student debt parallels the 2008 financial crisis. These practices by federal student loan services are reminiscent of the predatory lending practices that were widespread in the mortgage industry leading up to 2008. Just as high-risk mortgages were given to borrowers who couldn't afford them, the student loan industry also encourages borrowers to take on more debt than they can handle, with little regard to the ability to repay these loans. In conclusion, student loans were supposed to be used to invest in students, not cripple us. They were supposed to make education affordable, not create a new financial asset. The faster the debt is paid off, the less it will cost in interest, which in itself is predatory. I think this quote by Hassan Mihai speaks to the experience that many of us who have student loans share. Student loans cripple millions, especially those fresh out of college. Imagine starting a race and the guy with the starting pistol shoots you in the leg. My last point, while forgiving student debt won't fix the broken lending system or the high tuition costs, forgetting student debt along with increasing funding for colleges will help tremendously. I hope these points have helped convince you that the U.S. Congress should pass a law to forgive $50,000 of individual qualified student loans. Thank you.
I thank the previous speaker for those remarks and invite Zion Bennett to establish the response. Hear, hear.
Bad decisions made with good intentions are still bad decisions. James C. Collins. In this speech, I will first deconstruct some of the points coming out of opening government. Secondly, I will expound on the effects that their policy will have and contextualize how the federal government has broken our education system before introducing our counterplan. They said that forgiving student debt won't fix the broken system, but we will. College is a necessity, they say. It is important for the economy, and more jobs need a college diploma. That is right. Debt is like servitude. That is also right. Bankruptcy, predatory lending. I will address that later in my speech. It is all correct. However, their proposal of forgiving the loans does not address the systematic issue that is we have, which is a broken system. The government has proposed an idealistic policy to fix the issues in our education system they created. We agree we need to spend money. However, what government has proposed is not well thought out. What government is missing is how to improve our student debt system sustainably and not just temporarily alleviating those affected currently. Firstly, I'll be addressing, yes?
I think I counter this point by including at the end of my argument that this would be helped if you increase funding for colleges.
Yes, but the policy is forgiving the loans, not increasing funding. Firstly, I'll be addressing the consequences that will come from such a policy to prior, current, and future students. There is some benefit from the government's proposal. However, we think that ultimately this policy is short-sighted and will not be as effective as everyone may think. Secondly, the college system has been broken with the deregulation of the education system. It has gone downhill in terms of students' welfare. Not only did they deregulate, but they also decreased the amount of funding and population of students who can receive financial aid. This has led to an increase in predatory lending practices, as I mentioned, but it doesn't have to be this way. Our counterplan will not only use this money wisely, but also benefit more students, along with changing the unfortunate course our educational system is heading towards. Remember, opposition wants to help college students, but we feel government's proposal is misguided. We want to provide a smarter alternative. In regards to government's solution, their plan is a one-time supposed fix. In terms of sustainability, how does this plan help all current and future college students who will be accumulating debt in 1, 2, 4, or 10 years? Who will be in the same exact situation that we currently are? Do they matter? Are they chopped liver? We need to remember, the core of this debate should not be just throwing a check at the problem. Clearly, we need an alternative use of the money that will actually benefit the tens of millions of current and future university students. Otherwise, it'll be set a bad precedent for future students expecting parts, if not all of their loans, to be paid off by the government. The government's proposition will ultimately cause more problems than it will fix. The main population who will benefit are already graduated students who are upper-income individuals. They have entered the contract given by society, which is, in order to attain a good job, it requires going into debt. They chose that willingly. Frankly, they are victims of a broken system. Lawyers, doctors, and others in this bracket account for 40% of all student debt. The top 25 of high-income earning households account for nearly half of the student loan debt. This policy will mainly benefit those already well-off individuals who honestly don't need the money. Believe it or not, the college system used to not be broken. The government used to regulate how much colleges and universities could charge, along with providing more support via Pell Grants. Yet, they have let private institutions charge what they want, which skyrocketed the price of public college as well. Then not only did they allow college to become increasingly more expensive, in spite of that, they also decreased the amount of funding that they gave. Pell Grants used to fund 30 to 40% of college students. Now, they fund 5 to 10%. Over 90% of children from higher income brackets attend college, while a mere 35% from lower income brackets do not. Why is that? College is expensive. We all know that. Most scholarships are based on academics, which limits the recipients to the top 5 or 10% of students. Government-assisted Pell Grants now only fund 5 to 10% of the most bottom, lower income brackets. The other 85% are left to take out student loans. Then once they graduate, predatory lending comes into effect, as government mentioned. Did you know that the interest rates on student loans range from 4 to 15%? Can you imagine that? In the end, students are paying double or more of their original student loans. The doctors and lawyers are fine, but what about the other 50% of students who take out student loans, whose families cannot assist with college? Sure, this policy will benefit them now, but what about the millions of other students who will come in the future that won't have the benefit of loan forgiveness? It is not sustainable. To make it worse, the government has made it impossible to get rid of student loans, even if they become unmanageable. Car loans, house mortgages, credit card debt, and other forms of loans can all be cleared with declaring bankruptcy. It is a last resort, but it ruins your credit, among other issues. Yet bankruptcy does not apply to student loans. Student loans are a life sentence. Given all the evidence I provided, it's clear that government's proposition does not adequately solve the issue at hand. In regards to our counterproposal, we need to lower the enormous cost of being a student. We need to be preemptive. We will do this through regulation, through funding of public universities, by attacking the predatory lending practices, and through the expansion of Pell Grants. The current education system is not fair for the majority of our society. Our government cannot keep throwing money at a problem every couple of years to alleviate the strain on our society that they themselves are at fault for. Everybody hates student loans. We understand and agree. However, forgiving up to $50,000 in student loans per student will put the money in the wrong place. The solution we should instead consider is providing additional funding that would allow more students of lower income to gain the education they deserve by actually giving them the opportunity to increase their standing in society. We all know people who want to go to college, but they are not able to due to the high cost of admission. Government wants people to be educated. In fact, their citizens need to be educated. But conversely, our counterplan is we create a sustainable solution that will ultimately increase the accessibility of higher education for the majority, regardless of their financial status. For these reasons, proud to oppose.
I thank the previous speaker for those remarks, Senator by Thomas Schubauer, to continue the government bench. Hear, hear.
Alrighty, hello, I'm Tommy. After hearing the opposing position's rough outline of arguments, I'd like to refute some of their main points that they have said. So, one thing that they've talked about is that only lawyers and doctors would benefit from the erasure of these loans. But what about the degrees between $10,000 and $5,000, which is the range that we have specified these loans be forgiven? Not large amounts of loans from like 10,000 to 200,000 that most doctors and lawyers incur. So, and they say that it's not an effective solution. I'm glad they said that because I'm going to explain why yes, it's not an effective solution, but it is the only thing that we can do right now. And then yeah, so let me get into that. So let me expand upon what Kyla has previously said and explain why loan forgiveness isn't simply the right thing to do, is the bare minimum of what we need to do in order to stop a financial crisis of the same or greater magnitude as the 2008 crash. But first, some context of how we got here. So after the Department of Education issues a loan, they bundle it up into a bunch of other loans, creating something called a student loan asset-backed security. This is essentially a low-risk bond because it's being guaranteed by the government, making it a great investment. Unfortunately, over the last 3 to 5 years, these high-priced, low-risk securities are no longer low risk, with up to 11% of all student loans being defaulted. Defaulting is being the failure or inability to pay back a loan. This is a troubling statistic because around 36% of the total value of the government's assets is tied up in student loans. This is also distressing because this situation parallels the same financial environment the 2008 subprime mortgage crisis happened in. At the time, banks were overlending mortgages to people that were unable to pay them back. Banks would then bundle up these risky mortgages and sell them as securities or bonds. In order to be brief, as a result, these very expensive bonds that were supposed to be profitable to homeowners and as they paid their mortgages were not. This negligence in tandem with speculation fever of the housing bubble blinded the heads of our financial institutions into the ever-increasing percentages of mortgages that were being defaulted. In 2007, 11.5% of Americans defaulted / refinanced their mortgages. And that is when the price of these securities collapsed, taking our entire stock exchange and financial institutions. And how this is a parallel is that 11% of the student loans are being defaulted. But while these direct parallels with the crisis and what we're seeing right now are student loans, probably won't exactly play out as they did in 2008. The government is very aware of the default rate on its student loans. Investors are less willing to buy these securities as the default rate for the student loans increase, unlike how they would in 2008. Regardless, this is a financial loss for the government. But with a funny little thing called interest, the consequences of not dealing with the situation now can only exacerbate the crisis and its fallout. But make no mistake, the student loan crisis that we are now facing could absolutely be alleviated / pushed back by debt forgiveness in order to prevent possibly the greatest economic depression that we have experienced in history. And it's obvious from previous administrations' inaction towards this crisis that there was a time for procrastination. But that time is gone, and we are now, quote, staring down the barrel of the gun. So as a final thing,
So you are proposing this, but what does this have to do with the sustainability and future options? Are you going to increase funding and do forgiveness every couple years? How is this sustainable for the government?
well, we have to do it right now. Otherwise, if the student loans were to default, then all the assets held by the government lose all their value. So it's not really something you can push back. So as a final thing for y'all to chew on, in 2008, the banks went bankrupt. Actually, that ties in perfectly. In 2008, the banks went bankrupt, and it was the government that bailed them out in order to salvage the ruins of our financial industries. So it begs the question, if our government goes bankrupt, who is there to bail them out? Hopefully, we've proven to you that student loan forgiveness is the only economically sustainable option left.
I thank the previous speaker for those remarks and invite Elaine Williamson to close off the top half of this debate. You're here.
When we make college more affordable, we make the American dream more achievable. In my speech, I am first going to deconstruct some of the points coming out of opening government before rebuilding my partner's argument and adding my extension on our counterplan and why you should prefer it more. First off, while we all agree that student debt is bad, they didn't provide much of a solution on how to prevent it in the future. They're just trying to push this down the road. In fact, they agreed themselves that this is not an effective solution, so then why should we spend $1 trillion on this? If you want to prevent a recession, we should be focusing on reforming an institution that creates so much debt. On top of that, they say that the crisis can be pushed back by their proposal. How much farther do we have to push this back before we admit that the system itself is the issue? Now that I've deconstructed the opening government, it should be clear that the way things are in the higher education system isn't currently working. Furthermore, the government's plan to simply forgive up to $50,000 in student debt doesn't fix the broken college system. Our plan is not only better for the federal government, but most importantly, it's better for us, the students. To reiterate what my partner established, we also seek to solve the overarching issue of student debt and the cost of college. However, what the proposition entails is an expensive solution that doesn't achieve meaningful change in the system itself. Instead, that money should be spent on better funding colleges, countering predatory loan practices, and through the expansion of Pell Grants. Yes?
How quickly can you do this, and can you do it before the next Great Depression?
You see, the issue is that, the issue with that is that what you're proposing might do more harm for the economy than good. Anyway, before I get into my extension, I think a brief history lesson is pertinent to this debate. In 1944, during World War II, President Roosevelt and the Democrats, worried about potential veteran unemployment after the war's conclusion, wished to pass a bill that would give all veterans a year of government payments for their services. Republicans, and particularly the American Legion, took issue with the initial bill, and as a result proposed a counterplan, and they suggested that instead of a year of funding, veterans should be given guaranteed unemployment checks between jobs, quality of life benefits such as low interest housing and car loans, along with free college if they so choose. The government opted for this revised bill, and instead of handing out money to veterans, the government created a bill that was designed to target the root of veteran unemployment. The bill, widely known as the GI Bill, is still in effect today, and veterans have many benefits because of it, even 80 years later. This shows that what we're suggesting has historical precedent. The writing of a big check for those affected by a broken system is nice, but students 80 years from now won't benefit from it. What this shows is that we should be looking at a solution, a bill that will benefit students far into the future. Our counterplan is that solution. We need to reject the proposition and instead spend that money on something students in the future can benefit from, not at this time. The most important interest group of this debate is students. While other factors are important, they're secondary to the concern of students. I'm a student, and I understand. I'm in debt. I want that erased too. However, our biggest concern should be about the broken higher education system. The lack of funding the system and the students receive, and those same students who will suffer 1, 2, 10, or 80 years from now. The student debt forgiveness plan provided by the proposition does nothing to fix that system. As my partner explained, the government wishes to temporary fix to the issue that they are responsible for. The federal government should be held accountable for our current predicament and strive for a sustainable solution that will help college students for decades. The opposition is no friend of student debt. We're the enemy of short-sighted policies. The government's policy fails to fix the issue. We don't need student debt forgiveness right now. What we need is to lower the monumental cost of being a student. Yes?
I mean, in 80 years, won't there not be any colleges if the economy collapses?
How can you predict what's happening in 80 years? During the Great Depression, I'm sure people thought that we would never recover, and we came back.
Order.
Anyway, we will do this, as my partner said, through regulation, through the increased funding of universities, attacking predatory lending practices, and through the expansion of Pell Grants. The cost of both the proposition and the counterplan is high. There's no ignoring that. We agree that the government needs to spend this money. Where we disagree is that student debt forgiveness is the answer. Future students won't benefit. Unless the systematic issue of overly expensive college is fixed. Our contention is that we need to spend that money on a sustainable solution that will drive down the personal cost of college. What we need is a change in course, a counterplan. Overwhelming college debt is one of the biggest issues of our generation. It's something that has plagued almost everyone in this room. Instead of forgiving college debt now, we need to reduce college debt in the future and adopt a resolution that will mitigate the problem better than debt forgiveness will. We should reject the proposition of student debt forgiveness, not because student debt isn't a problem, but because they have the wrong answer. Instead, we will focus on regulation and increased funding, and we can't afford both. So my question to you is, should we not reject a plan that offers benefits for a few now in favor of a plan that benefits all students into the indefinite future? To us, the answer is simple, and for those reasons, proud to propose.
I thank the previous speaker for those remarks and invite Mina Hancock to open up the back half of this debate. Hear, hear.
Everyone has the right to an education. In America, however, the inflated price of higher education causes many to have to take out a student loan in order to afford the knowledge that they so eagerly yearn for. If Congress passes a bill to forgive $50,000 in qualified student loans, millions of Americans will be ridden of the burden that gaining a degree in the United States comes with. Before I get into my constructive, let me first deconstruct what has been said so far in this speech. First, it was mentioned that student loan only benefits the rich, the lawyers, and the doctors. Student loan forgiveness benefits the collective of America, not just the rich. The liquidation of 36 million people's debt will receive millions from the burden of debt. Liquidation of these loans also allows people to improve consumer confidence, give the government more money in taxes, and boost our overall GDP as a company. They also said that the high cost of college needs to be fixed and not just paused. This is something that we've well established in this debate as something we can all agree on. However, they speak of higher education expenses needed to be regulated as something that is mutually exclusive and not something that we can regulate with the student loan forgiveness, but it must be regulated through something else. The desire to fix and regulate the cost of education we can handle the student debt crisis and create lasting change for everyone. If both of them happen, our economy will prosper and every single person will benefit. They also mentioned that student loan forgiveness is just a handout for those who can already afford school. However, as the Education Data Initiative states, 35-year-olds have the highest average outstanding student debt, and their typical end balance is 287% higher than the value of their original loan. If this doesn't prove that loans are increasing exponentially and we need to do something about the problem right now, I don't know what will. Now that we understand why the opening is making faulty points, let's dive into why $50,000 in qualified student loans should be forgiven. I have one main contention for you today. The system of student lending has been based on lending practices that take advantage of our vulnerable populations. First and foremost, student debt is the product of greedy lending practices on the young populations. People are making these decisions when they're 18 years old, fresh out of high school. Again, according to the Education Data Initiative, 34% of adults aged 18 to 29 have student debt, making them more than twice as likely as any adults in any other age group to have student debt. Yes.
Wouldn't it make more sense to be preemptive and alleviate before they even gain the student debt? Or are you going to propose that we spend another $1.5 trillion 5 years down the road or 10 years down the road for the next 10 million students that have student debt?
Again, these are not mutually exclusive things. We can do both. If the government keeps pushing us to take out these loans when we are too young to properly make these lifelong decisions, as stated, our prefrontal cortex does not develop into our mid to late 20s. And as that statistic stated, 18 to 29-year-olds are the ones that have the most debt. Secondly, there is no financial literacy in our schools. The one thing that most people say they wish they had gotten during their high school educations is financial literacy. School before college teaches us that the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell, but it doesn't tell us how to do our taxes or how to save for retirement. Everybody has to do their taxes, but not everyone has to go to college. Only 15 of our 50 states require financial literacy classes to graduate, and only 12 other states even offer them in their general education. Students wanting to pursue a higher education are often forced to take out a loan or loans that they don't know the future consequences of. By forgiving $50,000 in student loans, the federal government is compensating for forcing people to make this decision when they are not yet educated enough. Finally, there is a large racial wealth gap in generational wealth in our country. We have a raging systemic system that creates generational wealth gaps among families because of the system that has been in place for so long. These families are also given fewer opportunities to accumulate wealth in our society because of the systemic oppression that is found in our country. Because those without generational wealth are less likely to have to pay for college out of their pocket, they are going to be the ones that are taking out these loans. They are going to be the ones that are being repaid with this forgiveness. We are selling the American dream of going to college to gain the money that you so want to earn, but then we send them to college and load them with thousands of dollars of debt, putting them deeper in this system that they cannot get out. Those that come from lower socioeconomic classes are also less likely to have family or mentors that can supply them with the financial literacy that they so desperately need. Because less generational wealth equals less money equals less need for financial literacy. Forgiving $50,000 in student loans will give these systemically oppressed people the boost they need in order to achieve the American dream that we so readily preach. Now that you understand the system of student lending specifically targets those who are most vulnerable within our society, I hope you can agree that the U.S. government should forgive up to $50,000 in student loans. Thank you.
I thank the previous speaker for those remarks and invite Abby Morrill to extend the opposition bench. Hear, hear.
My partner and I are from Alaska, and we are the models and solution of this here debate. In this speech, I'm first going to deconstruct what is coming out of the government bench as a whole, provide some clarification on the debate, and go into our constructive on the Alaska model. First, the government bench tells us that that this is the only option that we have. I tell you, this is not the only option we have. We do not get to just throw a check at our problems and have it go away. Also, there has been a lot of talk of just problems. No solutions have been established yet. But before I get into the constructive, I would like to clarify a few things. Firstly, we believe that what is killing the people with student loans is not the loans itself, but rather the perpetual cycle of payments because of interest. That is why expand and explain the OO's beliefs on access to education. Secondly, we believe that there is an inherent value of paying for one's education because being able to pay for your education makes it more meaningful. Panel, you are college students. You are not going to fail your classes because you know that that is money coming out of your bank account. You know that if you fail a class, you will have to pay another $700 to retake that class. That is what drives success in college because you know what? Money moves. After providing clarification on the debate we've had thus far, we think that there is a more realistic, tangible solution, the Alaska model. The answer to our problem lies right in front of us, under our nose, in this very room, maybe even amongst yourselves. Honorable panel, the solution to how we expand access to education to prevent student loans from ever occurring is here and evident between my partner and I. How do we prevent students from racking up student loans? How do we ensure greater access to education for all people? The Alaska model. And what do I actually mean by this? The Alaska Middle College School, or AMCS, is a program for high school students to be able to take college courses and get both high school and college credits at the same time with little to no cost. The Anchorage School District pays for tuition, fees, books, and bus transportation. I think that the two primary benefits First, high schoolers have more opportunities, and second, it uplifts minorities and low-income families. On high schoolers having more opportunities, dual enrollment is a great opportunity for juniors and seniors in high school across the country. There are programs like Alaska Native Science and Engineering Program, or ANSEP, that take aim to fix the problems and help solve the problems left by colonialism and attempt to bring greater access and equality for the First Peoples. Dual enrollment programs teach us about personal finance, insurance, and personal fitness, all with no cost and providing us the foundation to succeed. We know that high school education is typically not quality. We try to check the boxes instead of learning. With middle college and dual enrollment, Han and I can take classes on UAA campus, and that teaches us an opportunity of the foundation for success in life. Yes. Mina.
So you're talking about this on an Alaska level, but this is a nationwide crisis. What are we doing nationwide to help solve this problem?
I answer that a little bit further in my speech. I will flag it for you. Robin.
Once again, how are these mutually exclusive? Why can't we do both?
Why would the government give away money when there's already a solution present? There just needs to be more education on why and how people can access that solution. So, on uplifting minorities, this solution also exists in other jurisdictions. There's your answer to Mina. The Education Commission of the states explains dual enrollment courses provide students with the opportunity to access advanced learning experiences, earn high school credit and college credit simultaneously, and lower their tuition burden toward post-secondary degree. Currently, 48 states and the District of Columbia have state-level dual enrollment policies. 28 of those states established multiple dual enrollment programs. This means that there are so many programs for high school students to be able to go and participate in dual enrollment. Furthermore, the Columbia University says if colleges partner with K-12 schools to actively recruit underrepresented students and provide them with high-quality instruction and advising, they can close the equity gap in access to help those students on the path of college and career success in high school. Dual enrollment programs are increasing college enrollment and completion by giving K-12 students a head start on higher education or job preparation, especially low-income students and those underrepresented racial and ethnic groups. Yes, Robin.
How does your future solution help the millions of people with debt now?
Our focus is mainly on current and future students and generational debt, but there are programs like at the Alaska Native Hospital. If you are in the health career path, you can work for them, and they have a program where they will help you pay off your current or past student loans or reimburse you. There are programs like that that need to be more vocal. Alaska may be the 49th state, but the last frontier is doing something right. My partner and I and 700 other students are living, breathing, and tangible evidence of how successful dual enrollment programs can be. For these reasons, I couldn't be more proud to oppose. Thank you.
I thank the previous speaker for those remarks and invite Robin Bidwell to close off the government bench. Hear, hear.
If your friend broke their leg in the woods, would you give them a splint or would you ask them to walk to the nearest hospital? Of course, this isn't a long-term solution. We have never purported it as such. We instead state that this is the necessary Band-Aid solution until the long-term solution can be enacted. And yet, every time we have brought this up, the other side has yet to give a reason as to why these two solutions cannot run hand in hand. It is necessary for us to help the people who are currently suffering in thousands of dollars of debt and the people who are going to be suffering. Our solution helps the people who are suffering now, and we would love to see their solution that will help the millions and millions of people in the future. But that is not a solution for the here and now. Yes.
You say that this is a Band-Aid solution. Where in the world does a Band-Aid cost almost $1 trillion for the U.S. government?
When the gash is so deep that millions are affected. Throughout this debate, and I would like to summarize it now, we have had two different clashes. A clash of whether or not it is just to do this solution, a clash of whether or not it is economically sustainable to do this solution. When it comes to the just portion, on our side, we have stated that the debt is burdensome. It is near servitude, that the prefrontal cortex does not even begin to fully mature until it is 25, and yet we put these student loans on people when they are merely 18. We also state how these have been predatory loans, how these investments cripple people financially, and how we have not even taught our students financial literacy, and that most high schools don't even offer the classes for it. And surprisingly enough, and thankfully enough, the other side agrees with us on this, that it is incredibly burdensome, that this system is broken. And so we must help the people who have suffered under it. When it comes to their side, they have said that it is a bad precedent to merely give out money for this, that the people who did this chose to do so willingly, but they had no choice. All the choice that they had was whether or not to live a life of mediocrity with the very few jobs they could get without a college degree, or to pursue their dreams and the American dream and get the college education that they have the right to. Yes.
You kept mentioning how people who are burdened with these loans are not, their brain is not fully developed. So are you saying that if someone committed a crime at that age because their brain hasn't fully developed, that they shouldn't face the consequences of their actions? People should be able...
This is a straw man argument at best. All this is stated. You are comparing two completely different things. This is apples to oranges. You cannot compare murder to money. They have two completely different weight values. These are things that are not, this is a completely different situation. This was not someone who went in and made the purposeful choice to take on predatory loans that were pushed on them by the bank when they were not given the knowledge of what to do. Everyone knows murder is wrong, but no one who is a high schooler knows how the hell a student loan works. I barely know how the hell a student loan works. When it comes to the second clash of economics, the pro side said that a college degree is necessary, and it very much is. As the future continues onwards and it keeps coming towards us, we see that we are getting to a more technologically advanced world where higher education is more and more necessary. They have also said that there is $1.7 trillion of loans being currently taken out now. It makes sense that we would need $1 trillion to fix $1 trillion issue. We have said that these loans are delaying economic growth, that they need alleviation now, that it could possibly cause the next Great Depression if it is not solved. And this is a very real fear. We have seen this happen before. And that 35-year-olds are in the most debt out of all of this. 35 to 20-year-olds, the youngest demographic, because this was the demographic that was pushed these predatory loans and that was pushed towards these loans that the banks knew that they would not be able to pay off. On the con side, they brought up that this is not a long-term solution, that we can't keep throwing money at the problem, that the system is broken, that this is not the only option. And we agree on many of these things, all of them even. We do not suggest to keep throwing money at the problem. We do not suggest that the system is not broken. We have said it ourselves. But we need a solution for those who are suffering here and now, and we need a solution to stave off this economic disaster until a proper solution can get put into place. There is no way that that sort of solution that they offer could get put into place in a year, maybe not even in 5 years. Our legislative system is slow, for good reason sometimes, but it is slow. This is something that is a Band-Aid solution to help those until we can get these proper regulations in place. They have also brought up alternative solutions such as AMC, the Alaska model, and the solution that the first opposition brought up, which I unfortunately forgot to write down. I am very sorry. But all of these solutions are ones that can be done alongside ours. We state that yes, this is not the final solution. This is not the solution that will fix everything, but it is a solution that will help those currently in pain, and it is the solution we need until a proper solution can get through legislation. I thank you dearly.
I thank the previous speaker for those remarks and invite Hannah Cooley to close off the debate as a whole. Here, here.
Malcolm X told us, education is the passport to the future, for tomorrow belongs to those who prepare for it today. Today we tell you that closing opposition is the only team that provides you to the key to the future for those who with loans and prevents others from getting loans. In this speech, I'm going to deconstruct the government bench and provide 3 crystallizing questions to summarize this debate. Opening government told you, inevitably, it is not a great solution, but it'll do for now. But $50,000 is not going to it will not just solve the problem in its entirety. Every single person will benefit, but how is it just for those who have worked to pay those debts off from the beginning? There was a lot of talk about why the solution is a problem rather than how we can solve this problem. Up and down the government bench, they are forced to defend why future generations of college students take out loans. They have to defend why it is okay to continue this demonstrous interest rates. I think today they have not sufficiently defended that world. Now let's summarize why you vote for closing opposition today and why Abby is right, not at this time. Firstly, is there a problem with finances in our education system? What did Abby tell you in our speech about the troubles that people with student debt have in our system? Abby told you that what is preventing people from being liberated from loans is not the loan itself, but the interest. How do we solve this problem? We agree with that Congress should pass a law to restrict interest on all student loans so that people can pay them back. People want to pay them back, and people should be able to pay them back. Secondly, is there an inherent value to paying for one's education? Abby told you in her speech that there's an inherent value to paying for your own education. What examples does Abby give you to demonstrate that free does not always equal good? Abby tells you that in elementary school, middle school, and high school, students don't always give their full attention. They don't try their best. Why? Because there's no repercussions. They don't have to face the consequences of their actions, and they can just retake the class because it does not cost them anything. This is where we ask you, honorable panel, to reflect. What motivates you to do well in college? Is it the realization that failing a class is another $700 that you all will have to pay again? Everywhere in our country and education systems, people seek to do well in college, not only for the good grades, but also so that they do not have to pay again to retake the same class. Third, which side represents the most access to all education? I think this is really where Abby and I have the most realistic examples. Look at us, look around the room, and look beyond yourselves. Look to the 700 students that have come before us in middle college, and look to the thousands of students in dual enrollment programs across the country. First, Abby tells you that middle college and dual enrollment programs provide students, high school students, to take classes that teach us about personal finance, insurance, and personal fitness, all with no cost and providing us a foundation to succeed. We all know that high school education is typically not high quality. We like to check the boxes instead of learning, counting credits instead of maximizing education. With middle college and dual enrollment, Abby and I can take classes that teach us about the things that high schools don't teach or care about. This provides us the opportunity and foundation to succeed in life. We will learn how to manage our money, how to maintain our personal finances, and how to maintain our personal health, our fitness and health, and other things that we consider adult tasks. Secondly, and more importantly, Abby tells you in her speech that dual enrollment programs pull minoritized and marginalized students, or those who have less access to a higher education, and out into college. Colleges partner with K-12 schools and actively recruit underrepresented students and provide them with high-quality instruction and advising so that we can close those equity gaps in access for those students to get on a path to college and career success in high school. Abby tells you that dual enrollment programs are increasing college enrollment and completion by giving K-12 students a head start on higher education or job preparation, especially low-income students and those underrepresented racial and ethnic groups. Further, Abby also tells you that dual enrollment programs are growing nationwide. Approximately 88% of schools offer dual enrollment, and 34% of U.S. students take college courses in high school. That the growth of dual enrollment programs at the state level have been dramatic. Our generation is on track not to take out student loans in massive amounts, but because dual enrollment programs. The path that our generation is pulling on minorities and marginalized groups and low-income students and giving them opportunities to succeed in life and in higher education. Today, honorable panel, centuries of the past are looking down upon you. All the centuries of the future are calling upon you. Closing opposition is the only team that has provided tangible examples of solution that works and is popular. Abby and I are the living examples of how dual enrollment is functional and favorable. For these reasons, proud to propose. Oppose.
The first thing I'm going to do is excuse our judges so they can carry off to their task of deciding which of these teams is going to be our champion for 2023. I mentioned very briefly at the outset that the Seal of Debate program has a lot of things going on. In addition to our competitive arm, for which most people know us, we run a number of service projects throughout the year. We do things like running an entire middle school debate league, both here and now expanding up to Fairbanks, hopefully next year down to Southeast. We do public debates. We're active in the high school debating circuit, serving both as volunteer judges for their regular season competitions as well as hosting their state championship as we did just this past weekend. But it always is the case that my favorite event on which we work is this very event right here. Because I think this event typifies more than just about anything the ability of debate to raise people up and the quality of students that meet that challenge here at UAA. I recall a few years ago when the UAA team had a particularly successful year, the Board of Regents invited me up to offer some congratulations to the team. And at the same time, UAF's rifle team had qualified for the national competition, had done very well there as well. And one of the regents asked, why do you think it is that we are excelling in these particular areas? And I said, it comes as no surprise to me that Alaskans would be champions at arguing and shooting. So I think what you've seen here tonight, is an example of why Alaskans do tend to excel at debating. I think all four of these teams are due another round of applause for their effort. We've excused our judges, and they're working right now to decide which of these four teams they will crown as the champion, but we always conclude our Cabin Fever debates with a division of the House. Now, in the British House of Commons, from which this style of debate hails, a division of the House quite literally means that the people who are there to vote, the members of Parliament, file out a door either marked yay if they support the motion being debated, or nay if they oppose that motion. I'm not going to ask you to vacate the room in order to register your vote, but I think it's worth us doing a little vocal division of the House to see whether or not you support or oppose the proposition. So I'm going to ask in a second if you side with the proposition and believe that we should forgive $50,000 worth of student debt to say aye, and if you side with the opposition, to say nay. So let's do that now. All those in favor of the proposition who would support giving $50,000 in debt relief to those who hold student loans right now, please say aye. Aye! And obviously. And all those opposed say nay. Nay! It sounds to me like a clear win for the proposition this evening. Congratulations to them. But of course, as those of you who's been with us previously know, your vote matters for nothing. Only the judges and the judging panel will make that final decision. So we are going to stand in recess while they have a chance to finalize their decision. It should take them 10, maybe 15 minutes at the most. During that time, we're going to reset the stage, and when we come back, we'll do our award ceremony for the entire tournament. Stick with us, folks.
I did.
We did it.
Yeah, if we had that worked out like